Tyler Reed's life as an adventurer had taken him to the most perilous corners of the galaxy, but the message he received that day was unlike any other. Sitting in the cockpit of his ship. The Wanderer. Tyler leaned back and listened as the audio transmission crackled through the speakers. "This is Aloria. Our queen's ancient pet, Silthar, is in grave danger. It has refused nourishment for days, and none of our healers or caretakers dare approach. We seek aid from any willing soul. A royal reward awaits, but the risk is great." Tyler's brow furrowed. He had heard tales of Aloria, a mysterious planet ruled by an ancient monarchy that was as secretive as it was powerful. The beast in question, Silthar, was whispered about in various starports. A massive, fearsome creature revered as both protector and symbol of the royal family's unbroken reign. Ilana, Tyler muttered to himself, recalling the Queen's name. She was as feared as she was respected, said to rule with an iron will. Yet here she was, sending a desperate message to the far reaches of space. Tyler's instincts flared. The allure of the unknown, the challenge of saving a creature none dared approach, and the promise of a royal reward were too tantalizing to ignore. He set his ship's course for Aloria, his heart pounding with the thrill of the mission ahead. Tyler's ship touched down on Aloria under the cover of dusk. The planet was as wild and untamed as the stories suggested. Towering mountains, dense forests of shimmering trees, and an air thick with the scent of flora foreign to his senses. As he disembarked, Tyler was immediately met by royal guards clad in dark obsidian armor. Their faces were unreadable behind gleaming helmets, but their presence radiated intimidation. They escorted him through the capital city's winding streets until they reached the royal palace, a sprawling structure built into the cliffs, its spires gleaming against the setting sun. Inside, the air was cooler, the grand hallways filled with the faint scent of incense and ancient stone. At the end of the hall, sitting on a raised throne of black stone, was Queen Ilana. Tall, statuesque, and regal, her presence commanded the room. Her sharp golden eyes locked onto Tyler as he approached, and though her face remained impassive, there was a flicker of something else in her gaze. Desperation, perhaps, or hope. "You are the human who answered our call," she asked, her voice low and rich, echoing through the vast chamber. "I am," Tyler replied, his voice steady. "Tyler Reed. I've dealt with creatures across the galaxy. I'm here to help." The Queen's lips tightened. "Silthar, the guardian of our lineage, has refused all food and drink. It grows weaker by the hour. Our healers, they fear to approach him, as he has grown violent. The creature is ancient, older than my great-grandmother's reign, and it carries the weight of our empire's future." Tyler took a breath, sensing the gravity of the situation. If he's acting out, it's because something is terribly wrong. I'll need full access to your menagerie and all records on Silthar's health and behavior. But first, I need to see him. Queen Ilana studied him for a long moment. "You are either brave or foolish, human. Many have come before, and all have failed to soothe him." Tyler shrugged, a roguish grin flashing across his face. "Maybe a bit of both, but I didn't come here to fail." For the first time, something softened in the Queen's expression. She stood, her dark robes flowing behind her as she descended from the throne. "Follow me, Tyler Reed. I will show you to Silthar." As they walked together through the palace's grand corridors, the Queen's presence was a constant commanding force beside him. Tyler couldn't help but feel a strange connection to her, the weight of leadership, the unspoken burden of caring for something far more significant than oneself. They reached the menagerie, where the air grew thick with tension. Inside, Tyler caught his first glimpse of Silthar. The creature lay in the corner of its enclosure, its massive form coiled in misery. Its scales, once brilliant with refracted light, were dull and lackluster. The beast's breathing was laboured, and its once majestic eyes were clouded with pain. The beast stirred slightly as Tyler approached, letting out a low growl that reverberated through the enclosure. "You see now why no one dares approach," Alana said softly, her voice laced with concern. "Silthar is our empire's heart. If it dies—" Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. "I won't let that happen." And with that, he stepped forward, ready to confront the ancient, suffering beast that no one else dared to save. Tyler stood at the edge of the massive enclosure, taking in the full scope of Silthar. The beast was truly awe-inspiring, even in its weakened state. Its body stretched nearly the length of a starship, its thick, iridescent scales shimmering faintly as they caught the dim light filtering through the menagerie. The creature's long tail coiled around itself, and its massive head lay resting on the stone floor, eyes barely open. He could feel the ancient power radiating from the beast, even as it struggled to survive. The growl it had emitted when Tyler first approached still echoed in his mind, a reminder of the danger he was about to face. "You're sure it's safe for me to go in there alone?" Tyler asked, glancing at Queen Alana, who stood nearby with a look of cold authority. Behind her, several royal caretakers watched nervously from the shadows, clearly unwilling to get any closer. "Safe!" Alana's voice was sharp. "Number Silthar has lashed out at anyone who dared to approach him these past weeks. But if we wait much longer, it will die, and with it, our empire may crumble." Tyler nodded. He had handled dangerous creatures before, but nothing on the scale of Silthar. Still, the thought of leaving such a magnificent being to suffer and die stirred something in him. He glanced once more at the Queen, catching a fleeting look of vulnerability in her eyes. "Open the gate," Tyler said, steeling himself. The gate to Silthar's enclosure slid open with a loud mechanical groan. Tyler took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air within was thick, a mix of earthy smells and something metallic. Likely the result of the toxins Tyler suspected were slowly killing the creature. Silthar's massive head twitched as he approached, one eye opening just enough to track Tyler's movement. The deep rumble in the beast's chest grew louder, a clear warning. Tyler stopped a few feet away, crouching down to make himself appear less threatening. "Easy there, big guy," Tyler murmured. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The rumbling growl continued, but Silthar didn't move. Tyler kept his eyes on the beast's enormous scaled body, noting the dryness of its skin and the thin layer of dust that had settled over its once glimmering scales. Silthar hadn't moved in days, maybe weeks. Tyler slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a scanning device. He held it up, making sure Silthar could see what he was doing, then carefully began to wave it over the beast's body, trying to locate the source of its distress. As the device buzzed to life, Tyler noticed the air grow even. Tenser, Silthar's great eyes flickered with warning, but the beast remained still, watching him carefully. The scan revealed several troubling things. Silthar's internal organs were functioning at barely half capacity, and there was a build-up of toxins in its bloodstream. But more importantly, there was something foreign deep inside its chest that the scanners couldn't fully identify. "That's it," Tyler muttered to himself. "Something lodged in there. Something unnatural." He quickly turned off the scanner and backed away, careful not to startle the beast. Silthar watched him leave, but there was a flicker of recognition in its eyes, a faint understanding that Tyler wasn't a threat. Queen Alana was waiting just outside the enclosure, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. "What did you find?" Tyler hesitated, his mind racing. "There's something inside Silthar, something that doesn't belong, a foreign object, buried deep in its chest. It's what's poisoning him. Ilana's eyes narrowed. Poisoning? What sort of object could do such a thing? I'm not sure yet, Tyler said, but I think I can get it out. I'll need tools, a surgical kit, stabilizers, and I'll need to be close to Silthar. Very close. The Queen's face was a mask of control, but Tyler could see the fear behind her eyes. Silthar wasn't just a pet or a guardian. He was a symbol of her power and legacy. If she lost him, she would lose much more than just a creature. You'll have what you need, Ilana said firmly. But be warned, human, if Silthar dies under your care, no one will protect you from the consequences. Tyler met her gaze without flinching. I'm not here to fail. The palace's medical team had provided everything Tyler requested: surgical tools, stabilizers, and a small supply of rare Elorian herbs known for their regenerative properties. As he prepared to enter Silthar's enclosure again, he could feel the weight of the Queen's unspoken expectations pressing down on him. But Tyler had dealt with creatures just as dangerous and unpredictable before. He knew that success hinged not only on his skill, but on earning the trust of the creature he sought to save. "Ready?" one of the royal caretakers asked nervously, glancing up at the giant, motionless beast. "As ready as I'll ever be," Tyler replied, strapping the medical kit to his waist. He took a deep breath and entered the enclosure once more. Silthar's massive eyes tracked his movements as Tyler approached, the low growl still rumbling in the creature's chest. The beast's scales flickered faintly with colour, but its breathing remained shallow and laboured. Tyler knelt down just in front of Silthar, carefully placing his hand on the creature's broad snout. "I'm going to help you, big guy," he said softly. "I know it hurts, but I need you to trust me." For a moment Tyler thought Silthar might lash out, that the creature's instinct for self-preservation would overpower any rational thought. But instead, the growling subsided slightly, and Silthar's eyes softened. Tyler felt a wave of relief. Moving quickly, Tyler began to prep the area where he had identified the foreign object. He carefully made an incision along the thick scales of Silthar's chest, revealing the strange, shimmering tissue beneath as... It didn't take long for Tyler to find the object embedded deep in Silthar's chest. It was a small, jagged shard of some sort of crystal, pulsing faintly with dark energy. Tyler's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an injury, this was sabotage. "This isn't natural," Tyler muttered, carefully extracting the shard with a pair of forceps. The moment the shard left Silthar's body, the creature let out a deep, pained groan, but its breathing immediately began to stabilize. Tyler dropped the shard into a containment vial, his mind racing with questions. Who would place such a dangerous object inside the Queen's guardian? And why? As he finished closing the wound and administering the herbal remedy, Silthar's eyes opened fully for the first time since Tyler had arrived. The beast let out a long, low rumble. But this time it wasn't one of pain or warning. It was a sound of relief. Tyler smiled. "You're going to be okay now, buddy." As he stood and wiped the sweat from his brow, Tyler turned to see Queen Ilana standing at the entrance to the enclosure, her eyes wide, with a mix of astonishment and gratitude. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked vulnerable. "You did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tyler nodded, his heart still pounding from the intensity of the procedure. "Silthar will recover, but someone put that shard inside him. Someone wanted him to die." The Queen's expression darkened, her regal mask slipping back into place. "Then we have an enemy within these walls." Tyler could feel the shift in the air, the beginning of something far more dangerous than a sick creature. He had saved Silthar's life, but the real danger was just beginning. Tyler watched as the Queen's sharp expression hardened, her golden eyes flickering with a mix of fury and concern. The revelation that someone had intentionally sabotaged Silthar with the Dark Shard sent a ripple of tension through the grand halls of the palace. The once still air now buzzed with the unspoken threat of betrayal. Queen Ilana stepped into the enclosure, her gaze fixed on Silthar, who had begun to show signs of recovery. The beast's breathing had grown steadier, and its once dim eyes were slowly regaining their shine. Tyler wiped his brow, feeling the lingering tension of the surgery finally begin to ease. "You did more than just save Silthar," the Queen said, her voice low. "You exposed a treachery within my court." Tyler straightened, locking eyes with her. Whoever planted that shard knew exactly what they were doing. That wasn't just an accident. It was a deliberate attempt to weaken your rule by taking out your most trusted guardian. Queen Ilana stood silently for a moment, her mind clearly racing with thoughts of betrayal. The atmosphere grew thick with unspoken accusations. Whoever was responsible for the attack on Silthar was still within these palace walls, and that meant no one could be trusted. "I will not let this treason go unanswered," the Queen finally said, her voice cold as ice. She turned to one of the nearby royal guards. "Gather my advisors. I want every detail about who has had access to Silthar's enclosure in the past few weeks. No one is above suspicion." The guard bowed swiftly and left to carry out the order. Tyler watched the Queen carefully. Her composed exterior belied the fury simmering beneath. He couldn't help but admire her strength, though he also understood the immense pressure she faced. Someone in her inner circle had tried to destroy not only Silthar, but also the very foundation of her reign. If she didn't find the culprit quickly, the consequences could be catastrophic. "I'll stay and help however I can," Tyler offered. "I've seen this kind of sabotage before, usually done by factions looking to destabilize power structures. We'll need to track down where that shard came from." Ilana nodded, her gaze softening slightly as she regarded him. "Your bravery in saving Silthar has earned you my trust," Tyler read. "But this is no longer just about the beast. Whoever did this seeks to undermine my rule. We will find them together." Tyler felt a spark of resolve ignite within him. He hadn't come to Illyria expecting to get involved in palace intrigue, but now that he was in the thick of it, he wasn't about to back down. The Queen needed someone she could rely on, and if there was one thing Tyler excelled at, it was facing danger head-on. Later that evening, as the palace prepared for a formal dinner, Tyler slipped away from the Grand Hall and made his way to the Royal Archives. He had convinced the Queen to give him access to records detailing Silthar's care over the past few years, anything that could shed light on who might have planted the shard. The archives were vast, a labyrinth of ancient scrolls and modern data tablets stored within towering shelves. The quiet hum of the palace seemed distant here, as though the weight of history muffled all sound. Tyler began sifting through the files, focusing on the caretakers and advisors who had been assigned to Silthar in recent months. Several names appeared repeatedly, but one in particular stood out: Varric, a royal advisor who had overseen the menagerie for nearly a decade. "He's got access," Tyler muttered to himself, "but why would someone so high up risk sabotaging the Queen's most powerful symbol?" His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of soft footsteps echoing through the archives. Tyler tensed, his hand instinctively moving toward the small blaster concealed at his side. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Laura, one of the younger caretakers Tyler had seen near Silthar's enclosure earlier. Her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously as she approached him. "Tyler," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder, "you need to leave now." Tyler frowned. "What are you talking about?" Laura stepped closer, her voice urgent. "They know you're investigating. Varric's been watching you ever since you saved Silthar. He's powerful, and if he thinks you're a threat, you won't make it out of the palace alive." Tyler's instincts flared. He had known from the moment he entered this palace that it was a den of hidden agendas and quiet betrayals. But now the danger felt more real than ever. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, watching her closely. Laura hesitated, wringing her hands. "Because I don't want to see you hurt. Varric has too much influence here. If you expose him, he'll destroy anyone who stands in his way." Tyler's mind raced. Laura's warning had merit, but he couldn't walk away now. The Queen was counting on him, and Silthar's recovery had shown him just how deeply this conspiracy ran. "Thanks for the warning," Tyler said, stepping toward her. "But I'm not leaving. If Varric's behind this, I need proof. Can you help me?" Laura's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. She glanced around again, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Meet me by Silthar's enclosure after the dinner. There's something you need to see." Before Tyler could ask her anything else, Laura hurried away, disappearing into the shadows of the archives. He watched her go, a mix of suspicion and intrigue settling over him. As he gathered the records he had uncovered, Tyler's thoughts turned to Varric. The royal advisor was clearly the key to this plot, but exposing him would be dangerous. If Varric truly had the power Laura claimed, then the Queen's life, along with his own, was at risk. Tyler left the archives and made his way back to the Grand Hall, where the palace dinner was just beginning. The atmosphere was tense, with royal guests and advisors mingling under the glittering chandeliers. At the head of the long banquet table, Queen Ilana sat in quiet contemplation, her gaze sweeping over her guests like a hawk watching its prey. Tyler caught her eye as he entered, and she gave him a slight nod. She knew as well as he did that this night could bring more than just food and drink. The real game was about to begin. As Tyler took his place at the banquet, he glanced across the room and saw Varric, the royal advisor, standing near the Queen's inner circle. His face was calm, his demeanour polished, but Tyler could see the calculated coldness in his eyes. Beneath the surface of the formalities and pleasantries, a deadly conspiracy was unravelling, and Tyler was determined to be ready when it did. The grand dinner progressed with an air of tension that Tyler could feel in every word and movement from the royal advisers. Varric, in particular, was a model of politeness and charm, moving through the banquet hall as though nothing was amiss. But Tyler knew better. He could sense the calculating nature behind Varric's pleasant demeanour. Tyler's thoughts, however, were not on the banquet itself, but on the impending meeting with Laura. She had given him a cryptic warning earlier, and he was eager to find out what she knew. As the formalities of the dinner drew to a close, Tyler excused himself quietly, slipping out of the hall before anyone could notice his absence. Making his way through the dimly lit palace corridors, Tyler approached Silthar's enclosure, where Laura had told him to meet her. The night air was cool, and the stars above flickered in the dark sky. The palace was eerily quiet now, with only the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. Laura was waiting near the edge of the enclosure, her face pale and nervous. She jumped slightly when she saw him, then relaxed. "I was afraid you wouldn't come," she whispered, glancing around as though expecting someone to appear at any moment. "I don't scare off that easily," Tyler said, stepping closer. "You said you had something to show me. What is it?" Laura looked around once more before gesturing for Tyler to follow her. They moved silently along the side of the menagerie, the moonlight casting long shadows across the ground. Finally, they reached a small alcove near Silthar's enclosure, hidden from view by thick foliage. "I found this the night before Silthar fell ill," Laura whispered. Reaching into her satchel, she pulled out a small, jagged piece of crystal similar to the one Tyler had extracted from Silthar's chest. It pulsed faintly with a dark, ominous energy. Tyler's eyes widened as he took the shard from her. "Another one of these? Where did you find it?" Laura's voice trembled as she spoke. "In the garden, near Varric's chambers. He's been experimenting with these crystals for months. I overheard him speaking to someone about them, something about harnessing their power to weaken the Queen's hold over the people. Silthar wasn't his only target. Tyler's mind raced. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Varric had been using the dark energy of these crystals to sabotage the Queen's power, starting with Silthar. But if what Laura said was true, his plans went far beyond the beast. He was aiming for the Queen herself. "This proves Varric's behind it," Tyler said, gripping the shard tightly. "We need to take this to the Queen." Laura's eyes filled with fear. "No, Varric's influence runs deep. If we expose him now, he'll turn the court against us before we can even present the evidence. We need more than just a crystal." Tyler knew she was right. Simply presenting the shard to the Queen wasn't enough. Varric had been careful, and without solid proof of his larger conspiracy, it would be impossible to take him down. "What do you suggest?" Tyler asked. Laura hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the palace. "There's a hidden chamber beneath the menagerie. It's where Varric conducts his experiments. If we can get inside and find proof of his plans, we'll have what we need to stop him." Tyler nodded, determination tightening his resolve. "Then we go there tonight." The entrance to the hidden chamber was exactly where Laura had said it would be, tucked away beneath the floor of an old storage room near Silthar's enclosure. The door was hidden by layers of dust and old crates, but after a few minutes of searching, Tyler found the faint outlines of the trapdoor's edges. "We're not going to have much time," Laura whispered nervously as Tyler pried open the door. "Varric's guards patrol this area every hour." Tyler nodded. "We'll be quick." They descended into the dark, narrow passageway below, their footsteps barely audible against the cold stone floor. The air was thick and musty, with the scent of damp earth and old wood filling the space. As they made their way deeper into the chamber, the faint glow of crystalline energy began to illuminate the path ahead. At the far end of the chamber, Tyler spotted it, an altar made of dark stone, surrounded by glowing shards of the same crystal he had found in Silthar. The energy in the room was oppressive, like a dark weight pressing down on them. Tyler's skin tingled with the sensation of the malevolent power that pulsed through the air. "This is where Varric's been conducting his experiments," Laura whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the crystals. Tyler stepped closer, his eyes scanning the altar. On it lay an ancient, tattered scroll, written in a language he didn't recognize. Next to the scroll, a small vial filled with a viscous, glowing liquid pulsed with the same dark energy as the crystals. "This is it," Tyler said, reaching for the scroll. "This is the proof we need." But as soon as his fingers touched the parchment, a deep voice echoed through the chamber, sending chills down his spine. "You've made a grave mistake, human." Tyler spun around to see Varric standing at the entrance to the chamber, his face twisted into a cold sneer. Behind him, two of the Queen's guards flanked him, their weapons drawn. Laura gasped, stepping back as Varric advanced, his eyes glowing faintly with the same dark energy that filled the room. "I've been watching you ever since you arrived," Varric said, his voice dripping with malice. "You thought you could meddle in matters far beyond your understanding. You're a fool." Tyler's grip tightened on the scroll, his heart racing. "You're the one who's a fool, Varric. I've seen your experiments. You've been poisoning the Queen's most trusted guardian." Varric let out a low, cruel laugh. "The Queen's time is coming to an end. Silthar was only the first step. Soon the people will see her for the weak ruler she truly is, and they will turn to me for power." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Tyler growled, stepping forward, his hand hovered near the hilt of his blaster, but he knew he was outnumbered. Varric's eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand, the dark energy swirling around his fingertips. "You're too late, human. You won't leave this chamber alive." Before Varric could unleash the full force of his power, Tyler lunged toward the altar, grabbing the vial of glowing liquid and hurling it toward the cluster of crystals surrounding the altar. The vial shattered on impact, and for a brief moment, the room was engulfed in a blinding flash of light. The dark energy that had filled the chamber collapsed in on itself, the crystals shattering into 1,000 pieces. Veric let out a howl of rage as the power he had harnessed was torn away, leaving him weakened and disoriented. "Now's our chance," Tyler shouted, grabbing Laura's hand and pulling her toward the exit. They sprinted through the passageway, the sound of Veric's enraged cries echoing behind them. As they reached the surface, Tyler knew they had everything they needed to expose Veric's treachery. But the real battle was just beginning. Tyler and Laura emerged from the hidden chamber, their hearts pounding as the adrenaline from their narrow escape coursed through their veins. The night sky above the palace was filled with the soft glow of the twin moons, but there was no time to admire the view. Veric would soon recover from the disruption to his dark experiments, and when he did, he would undoubtedly strike back with more force. "We have to get this to the Queen now," Tyler said, holding up the scroll and the shattered remnants of the vial, the tangible proof of Veric's conspiracy. Laura nodded, her face pale but determined. They knew the stakes were high. Veric's influence ran deep, and any misstep could see them executed before they even reached the Queen. They made their way through the palace, avoiding the guards on Veric's payroll, moving quickly through the shadowy halls. As they approached the grand throne room, Tyler's thoughts raced. He didn't know how Queen Ilana would react. While he had her trust, exposing a trusted advisor like Veric was a dangerous game. But with the scroll and the remnants of the crystal shard, they had solid evidence. "Stay close," Tyler whispered to Laura as they neared the entrance to the Queen's private chambers. They were stopped by the Queen's personal guards, their stoic faces betraying nothing. "What is your business at this hour?" one of the guards asked sternly, blocking their path with a halberd. "I have urgent news for the Queen. It concerns the safety of the realm," Tyler said, holding the scroll aloft. "It's about Veric." The mention of Veric's name caused the guards to exchange uneasy glances. After a tense moment, one of them nodded and stepped aside. "You may enter, but tread carefully. The Queen is not in a forgiving mood tonight." Tyler and Laura stepped into the grand chamber, the air thick with tension. Queen Ilana sat on her throne, her golden eyes sharp and alert. Her regal posture conveyed power, but Tyler could see the exhaustion behind her gaze. Years of rulership now compounded by the recent sabotage of her most loyal guardian. "Tyler Reed," she said, her voice carrying a weight that filled the room. "You have returned. I trust you bring news of importance." Tyler stepped forward, kneeling briefly before rising to meet her gaze. "Your Majesty, I have uncovered the plot against you. Veric has been using dark energy to weaken Silthar and sow discontent within the palace. His ultimate goal is to destabilize your rule." He handed her the scroll and explained the situation, detailing the hidden chamber, the crystals, and Veric's role in the sabotage. Laura stepped forward as well. Backing up Tyler's claims with what she had overheard, Queen Ilana took the scroll, her expression darkening as she read the ancient symbols. For a moment, the room was silent, the only sound the crackling of torches along the walls. Tyler watched her carefully, unsure of how she would react. Finally, the Queen's eyes lifted from the scroll, her voice as cold as steel. "Veric has betrayed not only me, but the entire empire. He sought to undermine the very foundations of my reign." Her anger was palpable, but so was her resolve. Tyler could see the decision forming behind her eyes, and he braced himself for what came next. "Guards," Ilana commanded, "bring Veric to me. He will answer for his treachery." The guards immediately rushed from the room to carry out her orders. Tyler and Laura exchanged glances, knowing that the confrontation with Veric would not be easy. The royal advisor was cunning and dangerous, and cornering him would undoubtedly lead to violence. Your Majesty, Tyler began carefully, Veric has control over several guards and allies within the palace. He won't come quietly. Queen Ilana's eyes flashed with determination. Then he will face the full weight of my authority. You have done well, Tyler Reed. But this is far from over. Within minutes, the throne room was filled with tension as Veric was brought in, flanked by the Queen's most trusted guards. His usually calm demeanour was gone, replaced by a cold fury. The royal advisor glared at Tyler and Laura with unbridled hatred. "You dare accuse me?" Veric spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is a baseless conspiracy. They have no proof." Queen Ilana rose from her throne, holding the scroll in her hand. "You have been found out, Veric. The dark energy you've harnessed, the poison you used to weaken Silthar, there's no denying your guilt." Veric's eyes flicked to the scroll, his expression hardening. "You would believe the word of an outsider and a lowly caretaker over your most trusted advisor?" His voice was laced with venom. "This is madness, Ilana. They are trying to deceive you." "I have no need for deception," Tyler cut in, stepping forward. "I saw the evidence myself. Your experiments, the crystals, and the poison you implanted in Silthar. You tried to destroy the Queen's guardian, and now you plan to do the same to her rule." Veric sneered, his hands twitching at his sides. "You meddling fool! You think you can stop me?" Before anyone could react, Veric's hands shot out, unleashing a burst of dark energy that crackled through the air. The guards were thrown back by the force of the blast, and the room filled with the chaotic hum of raw power. Tyler dove for cover as Veric advanced, his eyes glowing with the malevolent energy he had been manipulating in secret. "I have the power of the ancients," Veric shouted, his voice booming through the chamber. "I will not be undone by a mere human." Queen Ilana stood her ground, her own power beginning to stir around her. The air in the throne room grew thick with energy as she raised her hand, summoning a protective barrier around herself and Tyler. "You will not destroy what I have built, Veric." Tyler knew he had to act quickly. The dark energy pulsing through Veric was powerful, but it was unstable. He had seen that firsthand in the hidden chamber. If he could disrupt it, there was a chance to bring Veric down. "Stay behind me!" Tyler shouted to Laura as he sprinted toward the royal advisor, blaster in hand. Veric unleashed another wave of dark energy, but Tyler dodged it, using the pillars of the throne room as cover. He knew that Veric's power was tied to the shards, the same shards that had poisoned Silthar. Tyler spotted a cluster of glowing shards embedded in Veric's belt. "That's his source," Tyler thought, his mind racing. He took aim, firing a shot directly at the belt. The shot hit its mark, shattering the crystals and sending a ripple of unstable energy through Veric's body. The royal advisor howled in pain as the dark energy backfired, his body convulsing under the force of his own power. Queen Ilana seized the moment, raising her hand to unleash a concentrated burst of her own energy, which slammed into Veric, knocking him to the ground. The dark aura around him dissipated, leaving him weakened and defeated. The room fell silent. Veric lay on the ground, gasping for breath, his eyes filled with fury and fear. The guards moved in quickly, restraining him as Queen Ilana approached, her expression cold and unyielding. "Your treachery ends here," the Queen said, her voice like ice. "You will answer for your crimes." Veric said nothing, his gaze locked on the ground as the guards dragged him away. The threat had been neutralized, but Tyler knew the scars of this betrayal would take time to heal. Queen Ilana turned to Tyler, her expression softening. "You have saved more than just Silthar. You have saved the entire empire from a traitor's hand. For that I owe you more than thanks." Tyler nodded, exhaustion beginning to wash over him. "Just doing what I had to, Your Majesty." The Queen smiled, but there was a new warmth in her gaze, a connection forged through the fires of battle and trust. Al-Zaraya will remember your bravery, Tyler Reed, and so will I. As the throne room returned to calm, Tyler and Laura stood side by side, knowing they had faced a great danger together and triumphed. The throne room was quiet now, save for the distant murmurs of guards and officials as they began to process the aftermath of Verrick's defeat. The oppressive weight that had lingered over the palace for weeks seemed to have lifted, replaced by a sense of relief, but also uncertainty. Tyler stood at the centre of it all, watching as the royal court slowly returned to order. Though he knew the deeper impact of the betrayal would take longer to heal, Queen Ilana dismissed her advisers with a wave, leaving only Tyler, Laura, and a few trusted guards in the room. The tension between them had shifted. Where once there was only cold royal formality, now there was a mutual respect forged in the heat of battle. "You've done more than you realize, Tyler Reed," Ilana said, her voice soft but firm. She descended from her throne, her golden eyes locking onto his. "My empire would have crumbled under Verrick's treachery if you hadn't exposed him. You saved my rule, and more importantly, you saved my people." Tyler nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. "I didn't do it alone," he said, glancing at Laura, who stood nearby, her face still pale but her eyes filled with resolve. "Without Laura's bravery, I wouldn't have found the proof we needed." Laura smiled faintly, but her voice was steady. "I only did what I knew was right. You were the one who risked everything to face Verrick." The Queen turned her gaze to Laura, a rare warmth flickering in her eyes. "Laura, your loyalty to the crown has not gone unnoticed. You will be rewarded for your service, and from this day forward you will have a place within my inner circle." Laura's eyes widened in surprise, clearly taken aback by the honour. She bowed her head in respect. "Gratitude." "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will serve with all my heart." Ilana nodded, then turned back to Tyler. "As for you, Tyler, you've earned a place in Eloria as well. I can't let someone of your skill and courage walk away so easily." Tyler raised an eyebrow, sensing the offer behind her words. "Are you asking me to stay, Your Majesty?" The Queen's smile deepened, a glimmer of something unspoken behind her gaze. "Yes, Eloria could use a guardian like you, someone who understands the creatures that others fear, and someone who has the courage to stand against even the darkest of threats." For a moment, Tyler considered the offer. He had spent his life wandering from planet to planet, chasing adventure, always on the move. But Eloria was different. There was something about this place, the ancient beasts, the mysterious wilderness, and the Queen herself, that stirred something new in him, a sense of belonging. "Perhaps I appreciate the offer," Tyler said after a long pause, "but I'm not one to stay in one place for too long. There's still a lot of galaxy out there that needs saving." Ilana's expression didn't falter, though there was a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "I understand, but know that Eloria will always welcome you, Tyler Reed. You have earned a place here should you ever wish to return." Tyler smiled. "I might just take you up on that one day." With a nod, Queen Ilana extended her hand, and Tyler took it. A bond of mutual respect and trust formed between them. It was more than a simple farewell. It was the promise of future possibilities, of paths that might one day cross again. The following morning, the palace was alive with activity as the court began to reassemble, processing Verrick's downfall and the implications for the Empire's future. Tyler, however, was preparing for his departure. His ship, the Wanderer, was ready for takeoff, and the sense of adventure that had driven him for years was pulling him back toward the stars. Laura stood beside him at the edge of the palace grounds, her gaze wistful as she watched him prepare to leave. "You're really going, then?" Tyler shrugged, a playful grin on his face. "The galaxy's a big place. I've got to keep moving." She smiled, though there was a trace of sadness behind it. "I suppose that's true, but you know you wouldn't be unwelcome here." He glanced at her, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. "If I stayed here, I'd probably get too comfortable, and comfort isn't really my thing." Laura laughed, though she understood what he meant. "I know, but still, thank you for everything you did. For Silthar, for the Queen, for me." Tyler gave her a nod. "You're stronger than you think, Laura. I have a feeling the Queen's going to need people like you in the days ahead." With that, he turned toward his ship. The familiar hum filled the air, but just before he could board, a voice stopped him. "Tyler." He turned to see Queen Ilana approaching, her regal form framed by the early morning light. Her expression was calm, but there was something more personal in her gaze now. "I wanted to see you off," she said, stepping closer. "It seems I owe you more than I can say." Tyler smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. "I'm just glad I could help." Ilana's eyes searched his for a moment, as though she were considering saying something more, but instead she reached out and placed a small object in his hand. A delicate, intricately carved pendant in the shape of Silthar, the beast he had saved. "This is a symbol of Aloria's gratitude," she said softly, "a reminder that you will always have a place here, no matter how far you wander." Tyler looked down at the pendant, feeling the weight of the gesture. "Thank you, Your Majesty." They stood in silence for a moment longer, the connection between them unspoken, but understood. Then, with one final nod, Tyler turned and boarded his ship. As the Wanderer lifted off, soaring into the clear sky, Tyler looked out at the palace below. Aloria was already fading into the distance, but the memory of this adventure and the people he had met would stay with him. The stars stretched out before him, endless and full of possibilities. And though he had chosen to leave Aloria behind for now, Tyler knew that his journey was far from over. With a renewed sense of purpose, he set his course for the unknown, ready for whatever the galaxy would throw at him next. As the stars flickered in the vast expanse of space, Tyler Reed smiled, knowing that no matter how far he roamed, he had made a difference, and sometimes that was enough. The universe awaited.